Welcome back to another episode of Tipsy Talks, where real conversations meet real experiences. From the First War of 1947-48, when Indian troops defended the nation's sovereignty in rugged mountains, to the recent Operation SINDOOR, where cutting-edge technology, drones, and joint operations defined modern combat. The story of Indian warfare is one of constant evolution. Every conflict has left its mark, from conventional wars with clear front lines to counter-insurgency operations in Sri Lanka, Nagaland, and Kashmir. India's military has adapted at every turn, reshaping strategy, technology, and leadership. Few have witnessed this transformation as closely as our guest today, Brigadier Brig Mohan, retired. He was commissioned into the Sikh Regiment in 1986. From his early baptism by fire in Sri Lanka during Operation PAWAN, where he was grievously wounded in action against LTT rebels, to commanding troops in high-altitude battlefields and the deserts, Brigadier Mohan has lived the full spectrum of soldiering. With over 35 years of experience and service, including stints at the Army headquarters, instructional roles, and frontline command, he now serves as Executive Director in India's largest security company. On Tipsy Talks today, we explore how warfare in the Indian subcontinent has transformed from 1947 to today and what the future battlefield might look like. So welcome, Brigadier Brig Mohan, sir, to Tipsy Talks. It's such an honor to have you here and talking to you on this wonderful platform that we have, sir. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much, Tipsy. It's always a pleasure to interact with you. And if I may, tongue-in-cheek, mention that it seems very intoxicating with the title.
Sir, getting down to serious talk now, what the viewers are in here for. Sir, I would like to discuss the changing nature of the Indian warfare, starting from the first conflict, I would say, not the war of 47-48, called the first Kashmir War, and bringing us on to Op Sindoor and then taking us beyond, gazing into the crystal ball ahead as to what lies in the future of the warfare, especially in the context of the Indian subcontinent. So since the subject is so vast, sir, I have decided to split it into three different episodes. In the first episode, sir, you please bring us up from the 47-48 war to Op Sindoor as to what all changes took place in the revolution of military affairs per se. And then we will discuss in the second episode Op Sindoor per se, sir, in detail. And then please take us ahead in the third episode as to what lies ahead for the nation as such and the entire subcontinent, of course, in the global context, in terms of warfare, which is now emerging and evolving. So we will start today with the first episode, sir. And this one, we will delve from 1947-48, bringing us up to Op Sindoor 2025. Now, if I can take your mind back to those early days immediately after the partition, sir, 47-48, 28 September 47 to be precise, when we actually signed the Treaty of Accession and got into war with First Sikh, of course. Sir, both the armies had very fledgling armies, both the nations, and absolutely no or little air force or navies to boast of, sir. What kind of a war was 47-48, the first Kashmir War, sir? What kind of tactics, strategies did both the armies employ? Because they were part of the same army pre-47 partition. So, what were the basic tactics that they engaged in to win the other guy?
Right. So, as you rightly said, it's a very broad canvas, starting from 47-48 conventional operations, then leading on to CI, and then again conventional, and then on to a high-tech war. Coming back to 47-48, the 75, 77 years in the life of a nation is a small time. However, India has traversed a long distance during this period and seen variety of conflicts. So coming to the first Kashmir War, as you rightly alluded to, in 1947-48, immediately post-independence, though Pakistan became a new country, but the organizational and the governance structure were totally different from what we had in India. And therefore, in that country, the armed forces were predominantly calling the shots as far as policy making was concerned. And in their assessment, probably they felt that immediately post independence, when the status of J&K is somewhat ambivalent, only with a standstill agreement in place, given the religious affinity and also the process of reorganization which was going on within the Indian Armed Forces post partition, they felt that probably this is the right time to take an easy catch, so to say, Kashmir, because geographical contiguity, religious affinity, and their knowledge about the terrain, which they felt would help them in taking it easily. What they adopted was also, today we can't call it conventional. It was a tribal invasion where they used the local population, gave them certain amount of training, and aided and abetted by the regulars. They started coming in from those porous lines which were available that time. And through Muzaffarabad and Domail, they started coming in into the Kashmiri territory then. So that is how this all started. And as they had expected, probably the Indian state was caught unawares, because there was a certain element of faith which was built into even the partition, notwithstanding the kind of bad blood which had flowed. There was certain understanding that this kind of a military adventure may not take place. Negotiations with Kashmir were still going on. Raja Hari Singh was adamant about keeping his status intact, and the standstill agreement was in place. Now, given this situation, when the invasion started, Kashmiris had nowhere to turn but to India. And that was the time when some very deft political move took place behind the scenes. Now, of course, it is in public domain. And how the accession of the J&K state came about, because that was a precondition for India to go in or come, because militarily, you can't intervene into a territory which is supposedly independent. So therefore, you need consent. And that consent was taken after the instrument of accession was signed. Within 24 hours, the decision was taken to move the forces into the valley. Now, this was a very, very bold decision. We didn't have much of idea about the terrain. We knew we were going into, we didn't know exactly what the military situation is all about at that point in time. So immediately, the first Sikh battalion under Colonel Diwan Ranjit Rai was airlifted from Palam and airdropped without even the aircraft pilot knowing what the condition on ground is, whether the airfield exists or not, whether it's in our control or not.
Correct.
Yet that risk was taken. And later, yes, that risk paid off. Having landed there, the operations from our side commenced in somewhat conventional way. Initially, it was totally infantry predominant, because the location, the geography was such, we didn't have that kind of equipment available with us. Artillery will take time to come in. There was no question of any mechanization or armored thing coming in that situation. So it was conventional in the way that we started fanning out from the airfield onwards and started taking the areas one by one and started enlarging our footprint and the area under our control. So that is how this thing started. And one very big factor which helped us was the local support.
So,
because the Kashmiris had almost zero affinity with so-called Pakistan. Because Pakistan was a new entity. There was not much known about it. It was a fledgling nation, just about a year old. So therefore, the locals and the kind of depredation that these tribals had caused, the looting, the rapes, the destruction, the way it took place, Kashmiris were totally disillusioned. And they came in full support of the Indian Army. And thereafter, one after the other, famous battles were fought. And of course, as the history is a testimony, we got our first Paramveer Chakra in that battle, Major Somnath Sharma.
That's right. Sir, the Battle of Charlatan, I think, is on the fingertips of every soldier and officer of the Indian Army and of the all the services. From this battle, which saw little or no participation from the Air Force and the Navy, we moved on to another battle in 1962, sir, which almost had a similar kind of a situation, where the Indian Army was fighting it out alone, in the high altitudes of Leh and Ladakh. What changed between 47 and 48, sir? How did we prepare ourselves, or we did prepare ourselves for what was coming to us in terms of the Chinese aggression in 1962?
1962 was a completely different ballgame. Here we were confronted with a nation which was larger in size. The dominance in global affairs was not what it is today. Yet, in terms of numerical superiority, they had a sway over us. There were disputed areas between the two countries, and the award, the way the line of actual control was delineated, China never accepted it. So therefore, the telltale signs of this conflict building up were available for a very long time. In terms of our foreign policy, since we wanted to be friendly with almost all our neighbors, you would recall there was in the Chini Bhai Bhai.
Yes.
Went on. The Prime Minister of China visited us just about a year before the conflict, and but the signs were there when the forward posts were captured in Arunachal. That gave us an inkling that things are not normal. It is, and they kept on raking up this issue that it is an unsettled border. Arunachal belongs to China, being an extension of Tibet, and therefore this issue needs to be settled. Both the countries were initially in agreement. That needs to be settled bilaterally by talks. Probably there was some amount of time taken for us to decisively agree to a certain framework, which we later on decided, and not read the telltale signs, as we say, leaves in the teacup,
right.
Which led to this. There is a very famous incident wherein once the incursion has already taken place, the Prime Minister then was moving from New Delhi to assess the forward area situation. And when the newspaper, because those days, access was available to the tarmac, there is a Times of India headline that when the news journalists questioned the Prime Minister about what the situation is developing and it's becoming grim, he said, I have ordered the armed forces to throw back the Chinese.
Okay.
So this is a Times of India headline in 1962, sometimes in October. So, with that kind of thing and coming back to the military part, we hadn't progressed much after 47, 48 till 62 in terms of our weapon systems, in terms of our organizational structure. Our drills were very good. Right. Our regimentation was intact, was very much in place. But in terms of equipment, and we had very little experience of fighting in high altitude areas. Arunachal was a difficult terrain. We were just not equipped for that. And since we did not read the battle signs, so to say, well in time, probably we went into it less prepared than what ideally we should be.
Right. So 62, it'll go down in the history as a debacle and a major wake-up call for the Indian Army as such, sir, and all the three services. From there, sir, we moved on to another misadventure of Pakistan in terms of the 1965 wars, which was majorly fought along the Western Front, with the battles of Chamjaudia and all the others coming to mind. How exactly was this strategy and the basic tactic employed on the ground different from the one employed in 47-48 by our chief adversary, Pakistan?
There is a lot of difference between the two. And before that, 62, I would say that there is a proverbial saying that every dark cloud has silver lining. So 62 was actually a wake-up call for us. And we did do a lot of work on the military front, armed forces front, in terms of the organizational structures, in terms of equipping the troops, in terms of taping up our battle drills. So both on the military and the political-military front, there was a lot of work which was done, which in a way paid off in 65. In 1965, the tactics and the strategy adopted by Pakistan were very different. In a way, some similarity was there when they launched off Gibraltar. It was similar to what they wanted to do in 47-48. They again launched those tribals, taking into account that the Kashmiri will automatically come onto our side. It failed miserably.
Right.
And thereafter, it was followed by the skirmishes in the Run of Kutch. In Gujarat, the Run of Kutch skirmishes took place, which did not end in much of a gain for any side, but the UN had to intervene. The International Court of Justice had to intervene. And on 30th June 65, there was an agreement signed between the two countries.
Right.
But thereafter, immediately following that, they started off with a conventional offensive, wherein a major difference and distinction was the predominance of the armor.
Right, sir.
Because the terrain was such, we had come into the area of Punjab, plains of Jammu, and later on when India expanded the theatre of operations into the deserts.
Right.
Pakistan was fairly well equipped as far as the armor was concerned. They had, if I'm not wrong, about 15 regiments of cavalry that they had that time. They had Patton tanks, which were fairly superior tanks. And so they were quite convinced that Indians will not be a match insofar as the armor battle is concerned. To some extent, they were right, and they were proven right in certain battles. You named a few of them, Chamjodia, Asal Uttar, and these battles are now a part of the military folklore. But the emergence of armor as a predominant force in the battlefield was one of the defining features of this war,
Right.
coupled with the introduction of the Air Force into it.
Right, right. I think this war primarily gave rise to the resurgence of the mechanized warfare in the Indian subcontinent. Would that be right to say that?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because the way this was, if I'm not wrong, it is called as the largest tank battle post for the Second World War.
Right.
The tank-to-tank battles which took place in this particular, and this war was pretty long. It was about, if I'm not wrong, 1 month and about 2 weeks and a couple of days.
Yes.
So it was a pretty long war it was, and there were heavy engagements of the armor. So mechanization hereafter is probably, yes, this was the start point for our military thinkers to see what the future holds for mechanized warfare in times to come.
All right. So from then we moved on to a major wars, which involved fighting on two fronts, involving a third nation in that. How exactly the 1971 war, the liberation of Bangladesh, how did that change India's security calculus, sir?
This is I think, a defining moment in India's military history and even in the political history of India. 1971 was instigated by Pakistan all by themselves because of the internal conflict that they were having between East and West Pakistan. You would recall that the geographical distance between the two is almost 1600 kilometers.
Yes.
Between East and West Pakistan. And East Pakistan, then, the emergence of Awami League, emergence of the popularity of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, and the entrenchment of the military rule in Pakistan started becoming the root cause of this problem. They tried to control it militarily, and they employed very hard tactics, strong arm tactics. Today, we are very convergent with the the term called genocide and such like things. But it actually happened then in East Pakistan, when the election results were not acceptable to them, in spite of Awami League winning 167 out of 170 seats in the assembly. That was not acceptable. In the National Assembly, they had a majority. Right. Yet, the election results were junked, and they intervened militarily. They tried to crush this uprising in a way, militarily, which resulted in huge inflow of refugees into India. Beyond a point, India was not a very big, thriving economy then, as we are today. So it was a huge burden on us. We tried to enlist the support of the foreign countries. We got none. We went around everywhere. Swaran Singh was the foreign minister that time. He went around almost to every capital which mattered. But we didn't receive much support. Nobody took us seriously that, yes, it will lead to a war. But now coming back to the military part of it. Once we had made up our mind, this was a classic example of synergy between the political establishment and the military leadership. It has been very famously alluded to by Field Marshal Manekshaw in several of his talks and books. So, how his meeting with the Prime Minister went, and even whatever was then equivalent to the Cabinet Committee of Security, when he was against the decision of the Prime Minister to go in during the months of June or July, because the monsoons were following. The areas in which the offensives or the war was to be fought would be inundated, leaving no room for armor to maneuver. And therefore, he asked for 6 months' time extra, which was very correctly accepted by the government, and the time was given to it. Now, in this operation, once again, how the strategic planning was done, how its execution at the local level was done, when so much of leeway was given to the local commanders, I'm saying army commander downwards, to plan the operation, and the execution was par excellence. The synergy for the first time between the Army, Navy, and Air Force was for all to see. It was again the complete paradigm had changed, and the results were for all to see. If you look at 71, probably we tried everything. There was a destruction of Karachi Harbour by the Navy.
Correct, sir.
There was an airdrop at Tangail.
Yes, sir.
By the Air Force dropped our para commanders, 2 paras. Then we had amphibious operations. We had ground operations. We had almost, in one of the places where I was reading, it has been termed as a blitzkrieg.
Okay.
The speed at which our armor moved and the way our pincer movements happened, the way we opened up another front to, on the eastern side for us to move almost unobtrusively. It was a terrific work of military leadership and planning, which we saw in 71, leading to a surrender, unprecedented surrender. No one has in the military history, but it is the largest surrender, country to country, between in a bilateral engagement. So 71 gave us a lot of lessons militarily. It was a crowning glory, there is no doubt about it. But as I'll come a little later, this probably also was the beginning, that the lesson that we learned here, how long could we carry it? Because the landscape changed thereafter.
Yes, absolutely. Sir, this also in one way or the another, you can say highlighted the supremacy or the overall dominance of the Indian Armed Forces vis-a-vis our adversary. Because for the next about, good about 30, 40 years, it has just kept quiet. And the only operation that we saw after 71 was in terms of Operation PAWAN, which was across in Sri Lanka, wherein we had to send our troops abroad and land them there to fight a very different kind of an operation, which we were not earlier familiar with, called the insurgency, the counter-insurgency operation. And you being there personally, sir, on ground, having fought the LTT rebels, we would like to hear a first-hand account from you. And what exactly did you feel around you, the nature of warfare, which is, rapidly changing and evolving?
Post 71, as you rightly said, we also assumed that Pakistan will be in no position to undertake any conventional kind of an offensive, because they were badly battered. That was taken. But thereafter, even during this time, there was insurgency prevailing in India, in Nagaland, in the northeastern states, predominantly Nagaland. But if I can use a term, Nagaland insurgency was a very ethical insurgency.
Okay.
There are a lot of rules that those insurgents and the Nagas rebels had. They would never attack a female. They will never attack those kind of things were there. But post 71, we were lulled into kind of a complacency, because Nagaland insurgency was limited to a particular corner of the country, which was not very much linked to the mainland that time. And 71 given us a supremacy in conventional operations, so we were consolidating on those gains. Thereafter, we moved on to mechanized warfare, DCBs, and so on and so forth. We kept doing it. Kashmir had not happened by then.
So
when Sri Lanka, this Indo-Sri Lanka Accord was signed, I have no doubt in my mind that there was some misreading of the ground situation, particularly at the military level. We had certain interaction with the LTT prior to our getting involved physically on ground in Sri Lanka's territory, Sri Lankan territory. So we had fair idea about them. There was fair amount of faith that they had on the Indian state. We were dealing with a very wily politician who was the president of Sri Lanka then. Junius Jayawardene. Now, when we went there, our idea of fighting insurgency was limited to our experience of what we had gained in Northeast. The insurgency by then had moved 100 years ahead. It had changed beyond recognition. LTTE as an organization has probably redefined what insurgency is all about, how they fought, the tactics that they employed, the kind of weapon systems that they used, the fact that they were prepared to die without blinking an eyelid, the fact that they used to carry the cyanide is a famous known to everyone. So we were not prepared for that kind of a situation on ground, which we faced when we landed initially. But then, given the credit to the Indian Army, we recovered very quickly. We regrouped, we reorganized, we redrew our tactical lessons. We worked out our maneuvers and how we have to act on ground. We took a lot of beating, there's no doubt about it. But then, thereafter, we contained the situation and we overwhelmed. Thereafter, the Sri Lankan government got a lot of breathing space. But what we learned in terms of purely coming back to the military part, what we learned from them is firstly, fight a gorilla like a gorilla. A person who is not prepared to die, you have to design new tactics to fight him. The weapons that we were carrying and the weapons that they were carrying, there was a huge mismatch. The IEDs, the way they improvised their IEDs and the way they used it to the extent that when a road is being constructed, under that road, a barrel full of explosive has been placed and there is a black tarmac road on top. We had not even heard of it, never even thought of it. And that could blow a tank up in the air by almost 10 feet. That was the kind of explosive that they used. The use of informants. There were 100% support that was available to them. So importance of VAM for us, winning of hearts and minds, which was an extremely difficult task. A very simple thing, using 2 magazines on an AK-47 rifle.
Yes.
It reduced his reaction time substantially.
Correct.
Whereas we had to take out a magazine from our pouch, unbutton the pouch, take it out, fill it up. By then he had already fitted the second magazine and was firing. So these are then stocking, the way they used to move on ground. Phenomenal, excellent, very good field craft. So those are the kind of lessons that we learned from there. It actually is an inflection point for us, wherein we learned our lessons, how to fight a modern insurgent bordering on terrorist.
All right. So from then, immediately after that, as you mentioned a little earlier, J&K happened. And then from J&K, a couple of years later, or possibly coincidentally, the Northeast also erupted in insurgency. Did the little experience that we gained there, prepare us and psych us up and prepare us both physically and mentally to face these challenges in J&K and in the Northeast in the coming years?
It was, in a way, a crucible for us where we learned our lessons and put it to very good use in J&K as well as in Northeast. The result you can see today, Northeast is almost quiet, barring few pockets of insurgency. Yes, there are certain political initiatives that have also been taken, but even militarily, I think we learned our lessons well. J&K, we used it extremely effectively. We established our battle schools where the troops used to undergo training before induction. Even if he's coming for the second time, yet he was undergoing that training. Our troops were totally exposed and trained on the kind of tactics that these people use, because by then, what LTT was doing, these had proliferated and was to a great extent being used even in J&K. So we had that experience of handling that kind of a situation in Sri Lanka, which we could make good use of in J&K. Local population, here again, initially to start with in 89, 90s, in the initial years of the decade of 90s, we had hardly any local support. And therefore, winning of heart and mind was once again put into great use. Right. We started establishing grids, dividing the areas. CI grid was established. We did our troop deployment according to the intensity of insurgency prevailing in various pockets of Kashmir. So we raised very, very, I would say, an excellent decision, both politico-militarily, to raise the Rashtriya Rifles. Because these were the people who would stay there permanently and build on the experience that they are gaining. And it paid extremely rich dividends. We raised our Rashtriya Rifle forces, then we raised the level of from battalion, we went up several notches. And this kind of the repertoire of experience that we were building up started the process in Sri Lanka, but matured in J&K. Right. And it was extremely effective there. As you can see from the situation, what it was in the early 90s, it has undergone several points of turbulence when Burhan Wani was killed, We saw what the situation was. Prior to that, there was a Hazratbal incident. We know what the situation was. Then the Amarnath Yatra row which took place, the land row which took place. So number of issues have happened in J&K, but militarily we prevailed over it primarily because we learned our lessons well and we imparted the lessons well to our troops who were deployed on J&K.
Right. Sir, for the next couple of decades, there was an absolute lull as far as a full-blown battle between the two adversaries is concerned. Of course, the LC and the LSE were very, very active all this while. But there was one battlefield which is also called, the highest battlefield in the world, Siachen, which was always, sir, on the boil. So would you like to tell us a little bit more about what kind of warfare, takes place and the highest battlefield in the world, and how do our troops prepare and actually, get ready to fight that?
That's a very good question, because Siachen is in one far corner of the country. We know the name. There is a emotional attachment to it, but not much is known about the kind of hardship that go into it. Historically, we know what happened there. Initially, the patrols used to go. The other side, our adversaries used to also come. When we found certain telltale signs of their presence in that area, there was a scramble that somebody has to hold this area because of the strategic significance of the glacier proper. There is a Karakoram highway on the other side, and the slope that comes down towards us, it gives a very clear view into the entire valley of Ladakh and then down. So a decision was taken by the establishment that we must occupy this, and we occupied it actually we beat them into the race. We occupied it before that. Now, there are posts which are ranging from about 12,000 feet to 21,000 feet. The climate is your biggest enemy. The weather is your biggest enemy. The terrain is treacherous, full of crevices. The temperature dips down if you add the wind chill factor to minus 55, minus 56. It's bone chilling, to use that word. And in that condition, to carry out your operational activity, even an act of patrolling, is heroic, to say the least. So, over a period of time, having occupied that place, we started slowly building on it and building on our expertise on high altitude or super high altitude, which first time came into our lexicon. That super high altitude battle, how is it to be fought? And thereafter, we started slowly and slowly inducting our artillery, and the infantry was equipped to fight the battle in those conditions. We had a dominant position. In Glacier, we have a dominant position as compared to our adversary. The skirmishes were common. It was very common. It used to happen from both the sides. They tried their level best because they were on a lower height. They tried their level best. Most famous being the battle where Bana Singh famously got his PVC. When they tried to occupy that, that was fought it. And similar other battles have been fought. So over a period of time, there are kind of stalemate that has happened about Siachen. But we have entrenched our position and we have become extremely good in conducting super high altitude warfare. Our troops are acclimatized. Now we have a battle school and we have a a drill which is well set now.
Right.
A word of the appreciation for the Air Force and the aviation, which have done a tremendous job there, flying their aircrafts into such treacherous terrain where the weather changes by the minute. They have done a yeoman service, especially in the days of initial induction and sustenance of the troops. They have done a yeoman service. So Siachen is an example that world is learning from us how to survive, and not only survive, but fight and give a bloody nose to the enemy, even in super high altitude area.
Right. Sir, okay, let me take you back to 71, sir. From 71 till good about 99, sir, for 28 odd long years, there was not much action which was happening on a very large front, sir. Did this, I can say, cold phase, or did it lull us into complacency, or was the doctrines of the Indian Army and the strategies to fight major battles still evolving? Were we adding on to our infrastructure and our capabilities, or did the skirmish of 99 of Kargil take us by surprise?
Post 71, as I alluded earlier, post 71, the focus was on conventional to further strengthen our defenses, further strengthen our troops, and move towards mechanization, and so on and so forth, till Sri Lanka happened. Post that, J&K in a way dominated the landscape. I'm talking the mental landscape of the entire nation. We were, because the kind of coverage that it was getting, international media, everywhere else, it was getting too much of coverage. The situation was not very good on ground. So our entire focus shifted towards that. In that, even though the specialized forces of Rashtriya Rifles were raised, yet the regular troops were involved in that. Now, the conventional warfare and insurgency warfare, a counter-insurgency warfare, are very different from each other in terms of the tactics employed. You have to unlearn certain things to learn this, which had a telling effect on the overall, I would say, competency levels of fighting a conventional war. Not to take away from the fact that, yes, mechanization was going on. We added a lot of items in our arsenal. Our maneuver warfare doctrines became more focused, much better. Yet, somehow the entire mental focus has shifted towards CI operations. And therefore, when Kargil happened, initially, again, it was on a slow boil. It started very slowly. It was a very regular thing that in winters we would vacate certain ports, they would vacate certain ports and reoccupy during summers. We took it as a matter of routine without realizing that there is something amiss till the Captain Kalia incident happened. So therefore, when Kargil happened, it was, yes, it was a wake-up call that conventional warfare has gone nowhere. It is, there was a normal commentary also going on by then that conventional warfare is slowly and slowly receding into the background because of the global situation which is emerging. 9/11 had already happened. So 9/11 happened 2001, but slowly and slowly it will recede into the background. So Kargil was a wake-up call for us, and since it was theaterized, it was confined to a particular theater, it was easy for us to muster our forces, and the kind of artillery, the kind of infantry that we could muster and put into that area was ultimately helped us in gaining the lost ground that initially we had lost and gaining an upper hand. And once again, the Air Force played a wonderful role in this. So the political directions were not to cross the LOC, yet with remaining within those guidelines, political guidelines which have been given. I think we did a tremendous job, and conventional warfare once again came into focus. All the tactics that we had learned about till so far in 71 and thereafter were put to use here. What we did in Siachen, in that high altitude warfare, was put into use here. We did a lot of unconventional things. The capture of Tiger Hill and the cliff assault that we did, we had only read about it. But here was a time when we executed it. Right. Artillery, the Bofors were used, probably it was a time when they demonstrated their full capability with devastating effect. So the synergy which was there within the armed forces with the infantry and the artillery, the Air Force which came in support, the conventional warfare once again came into focus. And because we were preparing side by side, in spite of the mind space being occupied by CI, we were preparing for it. We could come out with shining colors in this.
Right. So that was the, you can say the last, large scale, I will not call it a battle, operation, which the Indian Army and of course the Indian Air Force as well chipped in, witnessed in the last about 25, 26 years now, sir. So has it re-emphasized the thought process, which is there in everybody's mind, in the topmost authorities' mind, that the conventional war is a thing of the past now, and it's only going to be limited to skirmishes or possibly very, very limited short-scale wars which are going to follow. Has this thought process, been the initiator for the downsizing, or you can say, lean, thin, strong Indian Army and the other services too, which has been happening in the last 2-3 years or 5 years or so? And also, please tell us, bring us up to the latest of SINDOOR. What has actually transpired in terms of the revolution in military affairs, which has actually been witnessed by the three services of the Indian army, the nation as such, and the developing situation along the northeast borders, the northern borders. So please, in 3 or 4 minutes, please bring us up to date on what exactly has transpired between 99 and the initiation of Ops Sindoor 2025.
Simultaneously, alongside while the Kargil operations were being fought and the years following that, there was a revolution in military affairs taking place, which was a huge technological advancement, which was impacting the way war is going to be fought in future. The other side was that when we talk of conventional warfare, we are essentially looking at territorial gains as an end result, which slowly and slowly was losing its salience, because capturing a territory may be okay, retaining that territory was going to be a challenging thing, and it was not only Indo-Pak context or Indo-Chinese context, it was worldwide. But then thereafter, certain developments took place. There was a war between Armenia and Azerbaijan. There is a war which is going on for the last 3 years between Russia and Ukraine. So once again, while the conventional warfare was receding into the background because the territorial occupation or the capture of territory was slowly going down in terms of importance, because that was not found to be viable. And the focus was shifting onto destruction of military capability rather than occupying territory. And in destruction of military capability, with the revolution in military affairs, with the technological advancement which was taking place in terms of robotics warfare, in terms of space warfare, in terms of the kinetic weapons that were being used, which could be used as a standoff mode, it was felt by the military planners that you don't need to now plan for occupation of the territory or capture of the territory, but focus on the destruction of the center of gravity, so that you can bring about certain collapse, bring about that level of destruction that the opponent or the adversary is unable to recover from this for some time to come. But this aspect of revolution in military affairs, as it started during the, as I said, somewhere coinciding with the Kargil War a few years before and after, it has gained pace tremendously thereafter in the following years and decades. In the decades of 2000, when the new millennia started, we have seen huge technological leap being taking place, and the demonstration of which we saw during the Ops Sindoor. There are certain inflection points that I like to highlight. I mentioned about the Armenia and Azerbaijan war. This was conventional in one respect and unconventional in another. The way the drones were used and how effectively they were used was demonstrated in this particular war. And there were social media videos which were floating around then, how these drones were creating havoc on ground defenses, including tanks, how the armored vehicles had to scurry for cover because of the third dimensional attack, which was different from what we know of third dimension. Now, there have been a lot of writings on this RMA over a period of time, where we have talked about the robotics, sensors, how the information can be gathered and passed around, how a swarm of drones can be used at one place, where they can carry a lethal munition and offload it at a time and place of choosing. And once again, an example, if you see during the recent Russia-Ukraine conflict, there was a famous drone attack on Russian hangar, where a large number of aircrafts were disabled, but the minor damages. There were no major damage, there was no destruction, but there were minor damages rendering the aircrafts incapable of taking off for a sortie. Now, that is the kind of thing which is happening now, which is slowly and slowly taking us away from the fact that capturing of ground may not be as important in times to come. In Ops Sindoor, if we saw the standoff attacks which took place both in the air as well as by the long-range vectors, we have used BrahMos to devastating effect, and to top it, the kind of accuracy that we have depicted. If the popular commentary in the open media is to be believed, we were able to hit a loophole of maybe about 4 feet by 4 feet from a distance of 350 kilometers. Isn't that phenomenal? Now, that is what is happening now. The power of destruction is growing, the accuracy is growing, and the standoff ranges are growing. So, therefore, for a contact battle to take place, probably in future, it may only be to mop up.
Right.
In case you are still interested in capture of a territory. Right. Otherwise, you can cause significant amount of damage by just using technology and the long-range vectors that you have.
Right, right. So is this concept akin to what our northern adversary, China, has actually been cultivating for the last few decades, called the second artillery?
You can call that. You can call that because they have redesigned their RT core completely revamped it. It's one of the most potent forces that they have. And recently, if you during the China Day celebration, just about a fortnight ago, the kind of weapons that they have demonstrated, it was a very clear articulation of what kind of capability do they have, and if push comes to a shove, what all can China do? And in that same context, since you mentioned about two front, it's a reality today. We cannot ignore it. It became 2.5 front for us because there was a CI angle involved. That we are domestically, there are a lot of issues which military has to handle. So it is a 2.5 front. It's a reality. Where I have my reservations is the complicity in a very overt manner. In SINDOOR, we saw some complicity. There were weapons of Chinese origin, there were aircrafts of Chinese origin, there were missiles of Chinese origin which have been used and probably battle tested. But beyond that, will there be a situation when we have on-ground movement on both the sides, tackling both the fronts together? I still say that the jury is still out on that. Right. But it's a reality that we have to contend and prepare for, which I think we are doing it very well. We are already looking into that. If you recall, much earlier, today we are talking about two-front war, much earlier, almost about 16, 17 years ago, during the prime ministership of Mr. Vajpayee, our defense minister very famously said who our number one enemy is.
Yes.
So it was then a recognition, and today his words are sounding prescient. That yes, emergence of our eastern neighbor on the global scale has happened. They have arrived. There are no two ways about it. There is a gap that we have to cover. Our strength comes from being a democratic polity and a strong army which is experienced. So we are no pushovers, and there may not be ever a repeat of what happened in 62. But preparation-wise, we always have to be prepared for this two front. The second front is equally active now. How it can manifest is where the problem lies. Because on the Western front, we have fair idea of how things move. On the Eastern front,
yes,
it is little difficult to guess.
Absolutely.
And what is happening periodically, whether it is Galwan and going back to those skirmishes in Arunachal or Eastern Ladakh, it happens periodically. There is a lot to be read into those incidents beyond what happened militarily.
Right, sir. Sir, you're absolutely right when you say that the two-front, challenge has actually become a reality today that we must garner our resources up to and be gird our loins to face that eventually. Pakistan, as we see it, is slowly, slipping into the lane of asymmetric warfare, having failed miserably in a conventional war over the last few decades with us. China continues to become, a major adversary on our northern front that we really have to face up to the challenge, as you really say that. All this brings us up to the recent warfare, the recent war which has taken place in terms of Operation Sindoor, which was a very short and you can say unimaginably swift the war which took place, which did not involve much of the Indian armed forces as such, but involved the masses in a very, very large scale, in a very, very euphoric manner. We will discuss Operation Sindoor in detail with you, sir, and especially the drone warfare has the way it has come to impact effect now. And our answer to this challenge in terms of S-400 and the other challenges that the Indian Armed Forces today are equipped with. So we will invite you over for another session for a complete, full, elaborate discussion on Operation Sindoor, if you may, sir.
Yeah, we can start a new term that has come gained a lot of mileage these days. Is the gray zone warfare.
Right.
Probably that is what is between the bridging the gap between the conventional and the CI that we have been doing. Gray zone is gaining prominence, and that is what Sindoor also demonstrated, and that is what probably will gain more currency as we go along.
I just read that in the article that you submitted to the USISR about grey zone warfare, and we will request you to give us a little more detail about the concept that you have in mind and the way it manifested in Op Sindoor and what lies ahead beyond Op Sindoor in the subsequent episodes. Thank you so very much for being on the show, sir. It was really very eye-opening, informative, and intriguing to listen to the accounts of all the major battles that India has been involved in and the way the revolution in military affairs has actually impacted the Indian armed forces as such. Thank you so very much, Brigadier Manoj Mohan. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.